Hi, my name is Gina and I am a software developer. I have been doing this profession for about 5 years now, and, frankly, I still have not lost interest in it. But, on the contrary, with each new project, with each solved problem, I feel an ever deeper satisfaction from the fact that my work is not just a way to earn a living, but a real way to express myself, to assert my ability to create something orderly, harmonious, logical, and at the same time amazingly alive. There is something akin to art in writing clean, concise code. You seem to be putting together an elegant tower from invisible bricks, each part of which supports the other, and all this begins to work, to come to life. You just have to press the run button, and you freeze, watching how the world created by you begins to move along a given trajectory, fulfilling its plan flawlessly, almost without the participation of your hands. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. I work mostly from home, and this is probably one of the best decisions I have ever made, because this lifestyle perfectly matches my personal characteristics, my inclination for solitude, calm and measuredness. I look into the office at most once or twice a week unless there is a really important meeting with a client or a discussion of a project that requires my immediate presence. The rest of the time, I sit quietly at my desk, which I placed by the window so that I can see how the light changes during the day, how shadows from the leaves run along the windowsill, how raindrops, if it falls, flow down the glass, drawing intricate patterns. My corner is a real temple of productivity, a corner desk, 2 monitors, a favorite mechanical keyboard with a pleasant click of keys, a few plants, a few books, and silence, broken only by the quiet hum of the computer or the singing of birds outside the window. People say that I am not very sociable, and there is probably some truth in this. I really prefer online communication to face-to-face meetings. It is easier for me to express my thoughts in writing when I can think over every word without feeling the pressure of someone else's gaze or the need to react to the emotions of the interlocutor in real time. This does not mean that I do not like people. I am just built differently. My social battery discharges much faster than most, and noisy companies, many voices demanding attention, quickly drain my energy. This is why remote work has become not only a professional but also a personal salvation for me. I can be effective without sacrificing myself. I can take care of myself without giving up my career ambitions. Last year was especially important for me. I managed to buy my own apartment, although not the most spacious, but cozy, bright, mine. I took out a mortgage and proudly moved into a space that I could arrange to my taste, without having to compromise. For the first time, I felt like I had complete control over my life, that I wasn't just existing but actually living, and that even though my evenings were often spent alone, they were filled with silence where I could relax, thoughts that led to new ideas, and work that brought me satisfaction. My older sister, Sarah, is the complete opposite of me. Her appearance is always accompanied by noise, laughter, camera flashes, and endless stories that she tells with enthusiasm, engaging even the most reserved people in conversation. Her life is a whirlwind of events. She works in marketing, has been married to Federico for 5 years, and they have 2 children, Emma, a cheerful 4-year-old fidget, and Luca, a chubby 2-year-old with an inquisitive look. Sarah somehow manages to cope with all her responsibilities without losing her sparkle. She remains the life of any company, a magnet for attention, and, of course, to her parents she has always seemed perfect. At family dinners, conversations tend to follow a predictable pattern. First, they excitedly discuss Sarah's latest success, how she's pushed through a new project, how Emma has started reading, how Federico has gotten a promotion, and then, inevitably, there comes a moment when their eyes slowly and casually turn to me. "Gina, you're 28 now," Mom says, a worried note in her voice. "Don't you think it's time to find someone special?" I sigh and offer the usual line, "Right now, I'm focused on my career," but they don't back down. Dad frowns and adds, "What about your friends? You hardly leave the house." I tell him that I have friends with whom I constantly communicate online, and this is not a lie. I do text, call, discuss and laugh. It's just that it's all happening on a different level. They exchange glances full of anxiety, as if discussing a diagnosis. Mama sighs softly, "It's not the same thing, dear, you need real connections." The worst are these family gatherings, full of obsessive attention from distant relatives, each of whom feels it is their duty to remind me that time passes. Aunt Clara will certainly come up and say, smiling slightly, as if in passing, but in fact with a specific purpose. Don't drag it out, dear, you're not getting any younger, and Uncle Leon seems to have finally decided to marry me off, because last Christmas he tried to set me up with the son of his colleague, claiming that he works in the accounting department, a very stable guy, serious, thrifty. I politely refused, but he continued to insist, as if he did not understand that I really did not need it. Mama, to her credit, tried to protect me, but she did it in a way that made me even more uncomfortable. Gina is just very withdrawn, she would say, as if making excuses to the others, and then add, she needs more time. And then, after dinner, when everyone was leaving, they would sit me down and start the conversation again, which was filled with too much anxiety, too little understanding, and too little trust. It was awkward, Mom would admit. You didn't even consider Leon's offer, you spent the whole evening looking at your phone. I would say, I'm happy. Dad would shake his head, but you're so different from everyone else in the family. And in those moments, I would think, so what, do I have to be like them? Do I have to live by their script? I don't ask for much, I work, I pay the bills, I help out when needed, isn't that enough? But apparently it really wasn't enough. Despite my care, participation, despite all my attempts to show attention, they continued to compare me with Sarah, as if her life, full of light, energy, movement, was the only true template that I should follow. And every time I deviated from this conditional norm, that very expression appeared in their eyes, a mixture of disappointment, slight annoyance, and misunderstanding. Sarah became not just the eldest daughter for them, she turned into a standard, a living instruction for a successful existence, into which everything fit: family, children, a brilliant career, and, of course, many social connections, which I always lacked so much. Sometimes I catch myself wondering, do they love me as I am, or are they just waiting for me to finally transform into someone more convenient, bright, sociable, someone whose behavior does not make them feel awkward at family events and the desire to justify themselves to acquaintances? Last month, while scrolling through my Facebook feed waiting for the next build to load, I came across a post from my mom, excitedly talking about a birthday party she was planning at a country club. She posted photos of the interiors with crisp white tablecloths, glass chandeliers, and neatly trimmed bushes against a backdrop of green lawns, and her text was full of joy. She wrote that she was really looking forward to seeing everyone. She wanted this day to be special, unforgettable. I immediately added a reminder to my calendar and cleared that day of any work tasks. Despite all the arguments, she is my mom, and I really wanted to be there for her big moment. And the next day, while I was deep in a complex and stubborn bug, the phone rang. It was Sarah. Hey Gina, did you see your mom's post about the party? Her voice was as cheerful as ever, and I smiled despite my fatigue. Yeah, that sounds like it would be great. The country club is pretty swanky. Exactly, she said, so I thought we should think of something special for Mom. Something that would really impress. How about we all chip in $2,000? I froze for a moment. $2,000 wasn't a small amount, but I had some saved up, plus I was already helping my parents regularly, paying a few bills and buying groceries when they couldn't. Sure, that sounds good, I said. I'll wire you the money right away. You're the best, Gina. Mom will love it, Sarah said cheerfully, and without delay I opened my banking app and transferred the money, confident that Sarah, with her impeccable sense of taste, would definitely choose something beautiful and appropriate. On the day of the party, I woke up early, as if before something important and a little exciting, and, having brewed strong tea, spent a long time choosing between two hairstyle options, trying on a new dark blue dress, nothing flashy, but elegant, suitable for the country club ambience. I was really looking forward to this day, hoping that maybe this time everything would be different, calmer, warmer, with fewer awkward questions. At about 10 in the morning, when my makeup was almost finished, I decided to call my mother, just to clarify the arrival time and make sure that everything was going according to plan. Hi, Mom, just wanted to see if everything was okay for today. What time should I arrive? I asked, but there was a strange, drawn-out pause on the phone. Oh, honey, Mom finally answered, and her voice sounded unusually dull. I'm afraid we had to cancel the party. I frowned. Cancel? What happened? I asked, my chest feeling cold. I was so stressed last night with all the fuss, the preparations, the bookings, the calls. My blood pressure went up. I had to call an ambulance. They insisted on resting. I pressed my palm to my stomach, feeling it tighten. Mom, are you okay? Do you need me to come? I can be there in 20 minutes. No, no, that's okay, she answered quickly. I'm with your father, I'm not alone, I'm just going to rest. If I feel better, we'll have a quiet family dinner, just the closest ones. Are you sure? I still couldn't shake the anxiety. I can cancel everything I had planned. Really, honey, you don't have to. I'll call you myself when the time comes. Okay, Mom, get better. If you need anything, just let me know. We said goodbye and I sat on the bed with the phone in my hand, unable to move right away. I was really worried about her condition. Blood pressure problems are no joke, especially at her age, but the day was suddenly free. And to distract myself, I called Jessica, my only friend, with whom I always managed to find a common language without any extra effort. We walked around the shops, without any particular goal, just enjoying the leisurely pace, and then dropped into a small cafe with brick walls and old wooden tables, where we spent a couple of hours discussing everyday things, work, fatigue, TV shows we wanted to watch. That evening, when I returned home, I was going to settle into an armchair with a book that I had long wanted to read, but before that I decided to take a minute to look at social networks, to check if anyone had posted news about Mom or maybe shared something interesting. I have never been particularly active on Instagram or Facebook, mostly just scrolling through my feed without liking or commenting. It's enough for me to know what's going on. I even correspond a little with a few relatives, like Mimi, my cousin, who seems to consider it her duty to share literally every step of her life online, from breakfasts to new curtains. Mimi shared several photos that immediately caught my attention, not only with their bright colors and extraordinary festive atmosphere, but also with something more disturbing, something that made my hand holding the phone seem to turn to stone. These pictures captured what seemed to be a very lavish party: expensive food on miniature plates with intricate decorations, glasses of sparkling champagne, gilded cutlery, women in evening dresses and men in suits, laughter, music, camera flashes. Everything was filled with an atmosphere of fun, lightness, and celebration. But what really made me stop scrolling through my feed, what made my heart skip a beat, were the faces I recognized immediately, unmistakably, as if I was standing in that room and looking at them in person. They were my relatives, the same people who hadn't responded to my messages after the party was cancelled, who hadn't called, hadn't written, hadn't said a word. They were now standing in photographs with glasses in their hands, hugging each other, laughing, posing against the backdrop of luxurious bouquets and the white balconies of that very country club where, as I thought, nothing had happened. Initially, the photos were a repost from Mimi's account, but I quickly realized that they had originally appeared on Sarah's profile, an account that, frankly, I hadn't followed for a long time. With a slight tremor in my fingers, I went to my sister's page, and what I saw there made me hold my breath. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of photos from the celebration, all from that same country club, photos with captions like "Celebrating a Special Mom's Day" and "What a Magical Birthday Celebration for Our Amazing Mom," with place marks and happy faces next to them. I started flipping through each photo, one by one, as if I was hoping I'd find myself in one of them, maybe by accident, reflected in a mirror, in the background, somewhere. But no, Mom was there, looking gorgeous in an emerald green dress, holding a drink, surrounded by people who adored her. Dad was there, in a nice suit, with a big smile on his face, his arm around Mom's shoulders. Everyone was there: aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years, everyone who usually only showed up on big occasions. Everyone was there, except me. I sat in my apartment, at my neatly organized desk, staring at my phone, trying to process what was happening. My mom hadn't cancelled the party. She'd just not wanted me to go. She'd lied, they'd all lied. They'd thrown a lavish party, used my money to buy a gift that was probably currently glittering around my mom's neck or wrist, and hadn't bothered to let me know that the party had actually happened. I could feel my hands shaking as I flipped through the photos. My mom cutting into a huge, tiered cake decorated with fresh flowers and gold accents. Her opening presents that included a box that looked suspiciously like jewelry, the same one I'd dropped $2,000 on, believing we were doing it together, like sisters. But I wasn't even a part of that scene. And then it really started to hurt, not from the lie itself, but from the realization that no one had even noticed I was missing. They had celebrated without me, and they had done it so easily, so casually, that I began to wonder if I had ever really been needed at these family gatherings. My first impulse was to grab the phone, dial my mother, and demand an explanation, how they could do this to me, how they could take my money, lie to me, and then exclude me from an event we were supposed to share. I wanted to scream, to let out all the pent-up hurt and anger, to make them feel even the slightest bit of guilt, but then, something in me switched off. I just stood up, walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of hot chocolate, and wrapped myself in a blanket, going to bed earlier than usual, not turning on the TV or the music, just letting the silence wash over me. Amazingly, I didn't cry, not that night, not the next. What really struck me in the days that followed was the absolute, deafening silence, not a single message, not a single call, not a single attempt to explain, to invite, to even hint that the evening had taken place. Even my mother, the same one who had recently assured me that she wanted to have a small family dinner, never called, didn't ask how I was doing, didn't write that she felt better, nothing. And then I realized that everything had worked out just perfectly for them. They got the holiday they wanted, took advantage of my generosity, avoided my inconvenient presence, and were happy. I, in turn, decided that if it was so convenient for them to forget about me, then I could easily forget about them too. I returned to work, focused on the project, chatted online with friends, surprisingly easily got into the rhythm, and felt that the air in my apartment became a little lighter and my head a little clearer. No drama, no intrusive talk of real connections, and it's time to find someone. Almost 2 weeks passed like that. I lived a calm, measured life, not thinking about my family, and then, one evening, when I was deeply immersed in a complex piece of code, debugging which required maximum concentration, my phone vibrated, notifying me of a new message. It was from my mother. "Hi, honey, I hope you are doing well. Could you transfer us $2,000 for this month's mortgage payment? Dad and I are a little over budget, thank you, we love you." I reread the message 3 times, and each time I felt something like a mixture of distrust, amazement, and barely restrained anger growing inside me. Their impudence literally knocked me off my feet. They lied, they excluded me, they spent my money without saying a word, and now, as if nothing had happened, they were reaching out for money again, expecting me to submit again, to accept again, to forgive again. I stared at the screen of my phone, unable to look away, a single question pounding in my head like a hammer on glass. How could someone be so shameless? How could they so easily, so casually, ask me for more money, as if nothing had happened, as if there had never been that lie, that deception, that party that I had, however indirectly, helped raise the funds for but to which I had never been invited. My fingers shook slightly as I typed out my reply, trying to keep my thoughts clear and not let the anger spill out into the words, because inside me there was something much more than simple irritation. It was a sense of betrayal, humiliation, and, at the same time, icy disappointment. I typed, "I will not become a walking ATM for those who only know how to pretend, not a penny more." I hit send, and despite the shaking in my hands, I felt a strange, almost inappropriate sense of relief begin to well up inside me, as if I had finally said something that had been building up for too long. But that wasn't all. I went to Sarah's Facebook page, found the exact photo of my mother, beaming, happy, in an emerald green dress, standing by the cake, surrounded by relatives laughing, clapping, raising glasses, everyone looking so content, so carefree, and took a screenshot. Then I sent the image to my mother, adding no words, no explanation, just the picture, just the silent but crystal clear message, "I know." After sending both messages, I turned off my phone, completely, without the ability to receive notifications or calls, put it away from me, made myself another cup of thick hot chocolate, adding a little more cinnamon than usual, and went to the bedroom, where under a soft blanket I allowed myself to simply fall asleep, feeling a strange mixture of anger and satisfaction in my chest. I didn't scream, didn't throw a tantrum, didn't call, didn't demand, I just told the truth, finally. Without wrapping it in a convenient package of politeness. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, because I had an important video conference with a client in Europe, and, preparing for it, I turned on the phone without really thinking, just out of inertia, and almost dropped it from my hands, seeing that the screen was almost completely covered with notifications, dozens of missed calls from my mother, my father, Sarah, even from Federico. Voicemail was overflowing. And the messages kept coming. I began to read, at first curiously, then with a growing sense of detachment. They were all variations on the same theme, repeated phrases that they probably said out loud before hitting send. There's been a misunderstanding, you've got it all wrong, we need to talk and explain, please call us back immediately. The voicemails were even more chaotic. In one, my mother was sobbing and saying she didn't understand why I was being so cruel, that she didn't deserve to be treated this way. In another, my father was harsh, demanding, accusing me of being immature, of being childish, of blowing the situation out of proportion, and Sarah had left several voicemails in which she spoke almost tenderly, like a mediator, like someone tired of being between two conflicting parties. And she begged me to listen to them before making a final decision, but I wasn't going to listen or respond. I opened my phone settings and methodically blocked one number after another, Mom's, Dad's, Saren's, even Federico's number, just in case. Then I went to social media, turned off the ability to message me, added them to the blacklist in messengers, blocked email. The silence that followed was so complete and sudden that I almost physically felt the pressure in my chest leave, the constant background tension disappear. I went back to my morning routine, made a video call, then took out a project I'd been wanting to focus on for a long time, and was amazed to discover how productive I had become, without the constant internal tension, without the fear of being reproached again, without trying to justify who I was. But, of course, everything was not so simple. A few days later, when I had almost gotten used to my new state of calm, my phone started ringing again from unknown numbers. At first I would answer, thinking it might be someone at work, but as soon as I heard my mom or dad on the other end of the line, I would hang up. They were obviously using other people's phones or calling from work numbers, just to get back into my life. This went on for a few days, maybe a week. I no longer answered any number I didn't recognize. Then one afternoon, as I was making myself some tea and settling down on the couch with my laptop, there was a knock at the door. I walked up to the peephole, not expecting anything special, and froze. There they were, Mom, Dad, Sarah, even Federico, all of them, like a board meeting that had decided to hold an unscheduled meeting. They stood in the hallway of my building, expressions of determination on their faces, and although their voices were calm, there was tension in their postures. Gina, we know you're in there, Dad called through the door, trying to sound neutral, but his voice was still shaking. We're not leaving until we talk to you. I didn't want to open the door at all. I didn't want to let them into my space again, especially after everything that had happened, but the thought of them starting to attract attention from the neighbors by causing a scene in the common hallway seemed even less appealing. I sighed and opened the door. What do you all want? I asked, standing there, blocking the entrance with my body. We need to talk, my mother said, looking at me pleadingly. Please, honey, let us explain. Against my better judgment, I took a step back and gestured for them to come in. They walked into my apartment without saying a word, standing in the living room, looking at each other. Gina, we're so sorry, my mother began. We didn't mean to hurt you, we just wanted to protect you. I crossed my arms over my chest. Protect you? From what exactly? Sarah came closer, her voice soft, almost apologetic. You know how family gatherings go. Everyone asks the same questions, about your personal life, why you're single. We thought it would be awkward for you. My eyebrows shot up. So you decided to lie to me? To cut me out of the family, like I was an inconvenience? Just so it wouldn't be awkward? My father interjected, we know you don't like big gatherings, we just thought it would be best. I looked at them standing there in my living room, these people I had once called family, and whom until recently I had still been trying to understand, to justify, to accept, despite the growing tension between us, despite all these bitter differences in our perceptions of the world, in our values, in our basic honesty, and I couldn't believe that they really thought I would buy this ridiculous, hastily stitched together story of supposed care and protection that they themselves seemed to have begun to believe, like a convenient fairy tale that could be repeated out loud until the lie began to sound like the truth. Do you really expect me to buy this? I asked, barely keeping my voice from shaking. Do you think I'm that stupid? They all started talking at once, as if they were afraid of this pause, in which too much could sound without words. There was anxiety in their voices, haste, a desire to explain and not let me get away with my own conclusions, but I raised my hand sharply, like a teacher in a classroom when the hum becomes unbearable. Do Do you want to know what I think really happened? I continued, looking straight at my mother. I think you were ashamed of me. I think you didn't want your friends, your respected relatives, to see your strange, antisocial daughter, who does not fit into the picture of an ideal family, the one who is not married, without children, without a loud career in a glossy office, the one who is awkward to talk about at the holiday table. Mom and Dad blushed, not as when a person realizes guilt, but as people blush whose secrets have been brought to light, as if my frankness itself was a humiliation for them. Federico looked down at his shoes, as if he wanted to disappear, and Sarah opened her mouth as if she were going to argue, but she couldn't get the words out because she knew it was true. And the worst part, I added, feeling my voice grow colder, is that you used my $2,000 to pay for a party you had no intention of inviting me to. That makes you not only liars, but thieves, speculators. You used me, honey. It's not fair, Mom said weakly, pressing her hand to her chest. We spent so much money organizing this party that we didn't even have enough left over for this month's mortgage. I narrowed my eyes. Yeah, so the truth is out. You threw money around to impress your friends, and now you want me to bail you out again. That hurt me more than I expected, because over the years, I've helped them more times than I can count. Car repairs, medical bills, a leaky roof, a broken water heater, extra expenses for Sarah's wedding, emergency situations, vacations, new equipment for my dad's workshop, tens of thousands of dollars I didn't count because I did it out of love, and now, this thank you. I'm tired of being your personal ATM, I said, looking at them one by one. I'm tired of helping people who lie to my face, betray my trust, and don't even bother to apologize properly. If you need money for your mortgage, ask the people you're not ashamed to help, the people you invited, the people you celebrated with, the people who stood by while Mom cut the cake. They started making excuses again, as if my words didn't matter, as if they said enough and fast enough I'd have to forgive them. But I wasn't listening anymore. I want you to leave my apartment immediately, I said clearly, calmly, without even raising my voice, and it was more effective than any shouting. And I don't want to see any of you for a while, maybe ever. Federico seemed relieved, already taking a step toward the door. Sarah was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she didn't say a word. Mom tried to argue. Dad tried to argue, his face tense, his lips trembling, but I stood my ground, repeating over and over, like a mantra, go away, please, just go away. And finally, they complied. After the door closed behind them and silence fell over my apartment again, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and deep, heavy fatigue. I was proud of myself for finally setting boundaries, for not giving in, but at the same time I felt as if all the warmth, all the strength had been sucked out of me, as if I had just survived a storm. I hoped that this would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Over the next few days, the calls and messages resumed, again from different numbers. They wrote and called in turns, sometimes with apologies, sometimes with accusations. Dad even sent me a message telling me that Mom's blood pressure had spiked again because of all the stress, and that he said it was my fault. And then I finally realized that they hadn't learned anything. They were still trying to manipulate me, still trying to shift the blame, still expecting me to feel guilty for their own actions. Then the extended family got involved. Aunt Clara called and, in her usual patronizing manner, said that I was overreacting and that the family was supposed to be forgiving. Uncle Leon sent me Facebook messages urging me to be smarter and not destroy what took years to build. One day, even cousin Mimi came to my house. I saw her from the window and simply didn't open the door. Her posts about family values the day before had been too telling. The worst part was that they were all basically trying to convince me that I was the problem, that I had gone too far, that I had inflated my grudge, that an adult shouldn't take little lies so seriously. By their logic, I should just forgive and forget, because family isn't about the truth, it's about endless patience and submission. And suddenly I realized that I didn't want to be part of that circle anymore. I deleted all my social media accounts so they couldn't get through to me anymore. When my parents showed up on my doorstep again, I didn't answer. When Sarah tried to talk to me outside the grocery store, I just turned around and walked away without saying a word. After 2 weeks of this psychological fallout, I'd had enough. I called my friend Jennifer, who works in real estate, and told her I needed a new place. I couldn't stay in that house, in that neighborhood, where every corner reminded me of the grudge. Jennifer, knowing my situation, quickly found me a suitable option, a cozy, quiet apartment in another part of town, about 20 minutes away from my old home, but still close enough to the office if I needed to come in for a face-to-face meeting. The building was new, with good security and access systems, which I especially appreciated given the recent invasions of my privacy. I had planned the move carefully, checking every detail, like a major software release in which there can be no mistakes, no ill-considered steps, and although such changes had made me anxious in the past, this time I felt strangely calm, as if there was something deeply right about this controlled escape, necessary for my survival. I didn't tell anyone in my family about my decision, not because I wanted to take revenge or hurt them, but because I understood that explanations would only lead to a new round of pressure, reproaches, attempts to convince them, and I wasn't going to enter that vicious circle again. By that time, we weren't talking anyway, and that silence, contrary to expectations, turned out to be much more healing than any reconciliation. I hired professional movers, choosing a weekday for the move, the very period when most people are at work, and the entrances, courtyards, and elevators are half empty, and no one will pay attention to the boxes and fuss. I changed the address at the post office in advance, updated the data at the bank, with my employer, in online stores and the tax office, set up automatic forwarding of letters and notifications so as not to return to this issue. I told my new address only to the closest people, Jessica, with whom I went through fire, water, and almost all the stages of growing up, Mark, a friend from college, the only one from those times who did not disappear when I became less convenient, and a few colleagues with whom I really felt comfortable. I also completely changed my phone number, forever disconnecting the old one, as if symbolically crossing out one chapter of my life, and creating a new one in which my space is no longer subject to invasion. It felt like I was starting over, and it wasn't a scary feeling, but a liberating one. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living in a space that was mine alone, free of any traces of pain, echoes of old arguments, or imposed expectations. About a month after the move, I was checking my email as usual, and among the newsletters and work emails, I noticed one that stood out for its laconic sender line, Mom. I opened it without much expectation, but the words still stung. Gina, we heard that you moved and didn't tell us your new address. We can't reach you on the phone either. We know you're upset with us, but do you think you're being too harsh on us after what happened at the party? We miss you and want to work this out. Please contact us. I couldn't bring myself to respond for days. The letter hung in my inbox like an open wound that I kept gazing at but passing by, not daring to touch again. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, block even my email, erase the traces, forget about it, as if those words had never happened, but the other part of me, the one that still believed in boundaries, respect, and personal choice, knew I needed to make my position clear, once and for all. And one evening, when the city was quiet and only the occasional car was passing by the window, I wrote, I moved because I needed to be away from you. I'm not ready to talk yet and I haven't forgiven you for what you did. I still feel hurt and betrayed by your actions. When I'm ready to talk, I'll contact you myself. Please respect my decision and give me the time I need. I hit send and, to my surprise, felt relief, not a sharp, cathartic feeling, but a quiet, even one, like the calm after a storm. For a month after that, there was not a single signal from them, no letters, no calls, not even attempts to get through third parties, and during that time, my life really changed. There was more air, more space, as if old, heavy clothes had been taken off me, which had been pinching and rubbing for a long time, but I still could not bring myself to throw them off. Without all this family drama, without the constant feeling of guilt and fear that I would disappoint someone again, I had more energy for work, for friends, for myself. My productivity at work increased noticeably. I began to cope with tasks faster, show initiative, and, as a result, my boss assigned me to coordinate a large project, which, if successful, could lead to a promotion, and for the first time, I was not afraid of this responsibility, but perceived it as confirmation that I am truly capable. And at that time, a man appeared in my life. His name was David, a graphic designer working in a marketing agency, and we met at Jessica's birthday party. He approached me himself, with a slight smile and without coercion, and from the very first phrase I felt at ease with him, calm, as if we had known each other for a long time. Usually I feel constrained in such situations, I get lost, I try to leave unnoticed, But with him everything was different. He was also quiet, but in a different way. If I close myself off from an excess of people, then he is simply naturally calm, reserved, thoughtful. We had already had several dates, and each of them was easy, sincere. He did not try to make me different, did not expect loud gestures or constant involvement from me. He accepted me as I am, with my silence, my pauses, with my desire to be close, but not to dissolve in someone. Last week was my birthday. I had a small party, just the way I always wanted, quiet, intimate, without the obligatory toasts and ostentatious fun, just with those who really love and understand me, Jessica, Mark, David and a couple of other people I've become close with over the past few months came to a restaurant. We had dinner and then returned to my place, where we drank wine, ate chocolate cake and just talked. No loud congratulations, no unnecessary questions. I looked at my guests and, for the first time in a long time, I felt truly in my place. The next morning, while I was sipping coffee and scrolling through my inbox, I saw new letters from Mom, Dad, and Sarah. They were all short, almost identical. Happy birthday, we miss you, we love you. And looking at these messages, I felt neither pain nor the desire to answer, only peace. I was really touched that they remembered my birthday and took the time to write me, albeit simple, restrained congratulations, with caution and uncertainty between the lines, as if they did not know whether they were allowed to be a part of my life now, as if they were waiting for a signal, permission, at least a hint of the possibility of dialogue. I did not think long and wrote each of them a short message of gratitude, without embellishment, without emotion, just thank you for the congratulations. But even this felt like a small step forward, like the moment when you open a door anew, not to let someone in, but to check if it is too cold outside. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive them for what they did, not because I held a grudge or wanted revenge, but because betrayal, especially from those who were supposed to be your shield, your safe haven, leaves deep, hard to heal cracks in the very foundation of trust, and they still hurt when I think about them. They lied to me, excluded me from an event that meant more to me than they could possibly understand, took my money under the guise of good intentions, and then asked for more without blinking an eye, as if nothing had happened. This isn't the kind of pain that can be quickly cured. It's not a bruise that will fade in a week, a cut that can be bandaged. It's a wound that heals slowly, and even when the skin is smooth again, there's still a weakness inside. And yet, despite this, I am beginning to realize that constantly holding in my anger, trying to mentally replay their words, their actions, over and over again, is exhausting me no less than the betrayal itself. I am tired of being in this state of perpetual internal defense. Tired of living with the feeling that I need to be prepared for the next blow. Over the past few months, since I have distanced myself from all this family chaos, my life has begun to acquire a completely new quality. There is more peace, more clarity, more meaning. I have become truly productive at work, my projects have become more precise, my decisions are bolder, and my self-confidence is more stable. I am making new friends, real ones. Not the kind with whom I have to keep in touch because that is how it is customary, but the kind with whom I can be myself, with whom I do not have to pretend, and I'm in a relationship with someone who truly sees me, accepts me unconditionally, doesn't seek to fix me or improve me, doesn't yearn to mold me into a more comfortable version of himself. David has become something entirely new to me, not a savior, not an ideal, just a quiet, calm presence who makes me feel whole. Maybe this distance has been good for more than just me. Maybe my parents and Sarah have used this time to reflect, to realize how painful their actions were, to see how easily they crossed boundaries I didn't allow. Or maybe they haven't learned anything, and are still the same people who are willing to lie rather than face their own shame, the discomfort that comes with imagining an imperfect daughter. Maybe they still expect me to conform to their idea of what's normal, to fit into a box I never chose. I don't know yet, and frankly, I'm not looking for answers right now. But I know for sure I will no longer rush to restore the relationship just because they miss me or because society dictates that family is something indisputable, eternal, unquestionable. If in the future we really start communicating again, if we start building something anew, then it will only be on my terms, without pressure, without manipulation, with clearly defined boundaries and mandatory, sincere respect for each other. I do not want to be a person who constantly defends her decisions, her feelings, her boundaries in front of those who should support, not break, Now I am focused on building a life that I really need, without looking back at other people's expectations. I have a job that I love and at which I am good. I have friends who see my value. I have a person next to whom I feel needed, but not obliged to prove anything. I have my own apartment, cozy, furnished with love and attention, just the way I want it, and, most importantly, I have the feeling that I am living my own life, and not someone else's script, written by someone else's hand. Honestly, I don't know when I will be ready to forgive them, maybe in a year, maybe in 10, maybe never, but I know that now I am not ready, and that's okay, because I am finally beginning to understand. Sometimes, in order to survive, to become yourself, you need to put yourself first, and this is not selfishness, this is growing up. Write a comment what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.